What's going on, everybody? Carolina Combat back here today. Today we got associate head coach at UNC Chapel Hill as well as NCAA champ, Coach Tony Ramos. Coach, thanks for coming on.
Hey, no problem. Thanks for having us.
Kind of recapping last season, you guys were able to win a share of the dual meet title, first time since 2018, the 19th in school history, I believe. What does that kind of do for you guys in your program? Trying to build momentum going into this next season.
I mean, it's nice when you always win a championship, even, sucks when you got to share it. But to do that, you had to beat some good teams at like Virginia Tech. We were close with NC State and almost had a chance to win it outright. So that's always big just to see you're making progress, but you got to build off it because we want to win a team title, at the ACC tournament. We want to bring home NCAA trophies. And that's just another part of the building block to make sure you're heading in the right direction, keep recruits excited, and just kind of going from there.
Yeah, I've been seeing on social media about some renovations in the locker room. Can you kind of speak on that or kind of what's going on in the wrestling facilities?
Yeah, we're kind of redoing the whole upstairs. We pulled out all the lockers. We're getting brand new lockers. Moving some equipment around to create more mat space and just rearranging and taking out some walls, giving more space. We're excited for it. We got new floor that's already in, and the new locker should hopefully be here in August with new paint going up and new branding. So we're just trying to, the space we have, we got to make the best of it. So when the recruits come in, you can see, this is Carolina wrestling. We care about wrestling here. We're putting time and effort and resources into the program. So we got to make it look like that too.
With the addition of Stanford last year, another top 25 team in the conference, a lot of your conference is pretty close. How do you prepare your guys to, take a bigger trip for a conference dual meet? Because I got to, I'm sure it's a little different than kind of what you guys are used to. So.
Yeah, that's when I wrestled in the Big Ten, we traveled around a lot, so I was pretty used to it. But when you get into the ACC, before Stanford, everything's either a drive or you might have one flight to Pitt, and then sometimes you're even driving that. I think they get used to it though, just from competition and creating environments and practice where you're uncomfortable or situations where, again, it's just making sure they're comfortable being uncomfortable. Um, we travel to Iowa. We do some trips that are a little bit further or overnight trips. And like you said, though, going to Stanford, that's two time zones away.
Right.
So it's
Yeah.
really hard to simulate and prepare for that. There's things you can do. Some people talk about training, around the times you might compete, adjusting your sleep schedule. For us, that's not something we did this last time we went out there. We went out the day before, we wrestled, we came back and just tried to make it as smooth as possible to get there. There's a direct flights, hit a team on the way back, and then, have the guys ready to go for the ACC championship.
Kind of speaking into a little bit of recruiting and transfer portal, how has the portal kind of, changed coaching for you? And you got some really good guys coming in from the portal too. So kind of how does that help you, moving into this next upcoming season?
It helps you fill holes that are, glaring or where you need a quick fix. Not saying it's always the right way or the best way to go about it, but if you're not playing the portal game, you're going to get left behind. So there's multiple ways to work at it. You got a lot of teams out there that are having success with just portal guys, and you got a lot of teams that are having success with, building the roster from the ground up with high school and development. But for us, we try and do a mix of both. We want to develop guys, we want to get them better, but if we need, to figure out a lineup situation or a spot, we're gonna have to go and look in that portal to make sure we're staying competitive and we're staying up there with all the other programs.
Yeah, going back to the Virginia Tech duel, what was the electricity like that? Because they were, I believe you guys were top 25 at the time, but they were seven at the time. So what did that duel
Yep.
meet kind of mean for you? And, it's a program move.
Yeah, it's a big one. Virginia Tech's always tough. NC State's always tough. Stanford's going to be really tough in the next couple, next year. Um, and you know, for us, you can kind of go back and look at that duel, and people can say, well, they might have had some guys out or different things going on. Yeah, that might have happened, but at the same time, our guys came ready to wrestle. Gavin Kane goes out and gets a fall against All-American, TJ Stewart. Spencer Moore goes out and beats Eddie Ventresca. So we had some guys who really stepped up to the plate and competed hard. And we wrestled the lineup that was out there. We can't control who goes out on the mat, who's not competing. That's
Right.
not in our control. But what we can control is how we compete and how our guys get ready and they prepare. So that's a big one for us. You always mark it on the calendar. You got NC State, you got Virginia Tech. Those are really big ones. Pitt's a big one. The ACC is getting tough.
Absolutely.
It's exciting. We only have 7 schools now, I believe it is, but you're getting good. You're getting tested every time you're going out in the ACC. Maybe other than a few other schools, but it's always been fun.
Into like athlete versus coach, what is it like? You obviously coached Austin O'Connor to 2 national titles, but also competing in that finals, winning it. Kind of, what's the difference between the two of those? I guess winning it and coaching it. Yeah.
I would say that the biggest difference is I can't go out there and control it.
Right.
You can have your guy as prepared as you think or as ready as you think he is, but the biggest thing is he's got to perform when the lights turn on or when the whistle blows. So, I've been a part of almost on 2 ends with O'Connor and Keyshawn Clark. We've had Keyshawn Clark in the finals too, where O'Connor's first one, it was a nail biter, it was close, last second, situation, possible takedown, possible not, and you're on edge, and your heart's racing the whole time the match is going on, compared to the one where he wrestled Levi. Like, that was easy for me as a
Domination.
coach.
Yeah.
He
Absolutely.
controlled the match, he dominated. There wasn't many close calls. Just really stayed poised and did what he did all the time, and that's go out and beat guys up. And I remember afterwards, I was like, man, that like really like it was fun because he won, but it wasn't
Well, like on edge.
fun when
Yeah.
you're jumping around and you're excited and you get that last second takedown and everyone's going crazy. So
Right.
it's kind of funny because, like, yeah, the guy just won a national title and everyone's all excited, but at the same time, you don't have those same, nervous butterflies that create these big emotions,
Right.
because he did such a good job doing his job. So it's always interesting when you're in those situations and how the matches play out, and how it affects you as a coach in the corner.
We're matching Carver-Hawkeye over Jordan Oliver. How do you mentally prepare yourself for a match like that, and just kind of what was it like to experience that overtime win?
Um, it comes down to, and it's the same thing we talk about with our guys all the time. You have to, be ready, be prepared. And I always tell people, when I went into that Jordan Oliver match, there might have been 2 or 3 people that thought I could actually win, myself and maybe Terry Brands, who was helping get me ready. I remember coming off the mat and even my dad's like, man, I didn't think you had a chance in that one.
Right. Right.
And, going into it, I believed in my coaches, I believed in my training, and I believed I was ready to win. And that's really how you got to prepare and get ready for matches is, you know, if you're nervous, if you're having doubts, it's because you didn't prepare right. So it's what did you do leading up? How did you prepare for that big moment, 1 week, 2 week, 3 weeks before, 24 hours before? Or did you do all the right things to make sure when it's time to step on the mat or it's time to compete, deep down inside, like, hey, no matter what happens, I know I prepared for this right. And then when you get in the match and it's kind of starting to go as planned or as the game plan starts to unfold, your confidence grows. You're like, hey, I'm in this. I can compete. I can wrestle with these guys. Um, and got that takedown right at the end of the third period, and I remember looking up at the clock and it's like, all right, I just got to run it for 7 seconds. And
Right.
if you
Yeah. Oh,
go
yeah.
back, if you go back and watch the match, I mean, we probably shouldn't even went to overtime. Riding time got all screwed up. They went back, they fixed it, they put it under a minute because I was watching the clock go down
Yeah. Oh,
before
yeah.
I
Oh,
let him
yeah.
go. And John Smith comes to the table, all of a sudden riding time's at a minute, and we're going to overtime. And I was like, all right, well, I guess I'm gonna have to beat him again.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And, I didn't get the escape, but I end up getting, that caution point. And some people might say, well, you went on a caution. Well, not really. I still had to ride him out
Right.
in the
100%.
30-second ride outs. So we get into the ride outs, and, after the one mat return, he kind of goes to roll. You kind of feel it like that he had one in him. I took it out of him. And that's kind of when the crowd starts getting crazy. People start screaming, yelling. And for me, the emotions were really high just because, the year prior they sat me in that duel. I didn't get to wrestle. So it was a thing I was waiting for almost 2 years,
Right.
to be able to have that match and compete against him and go out there and just prove to everyone like, hey, I can compete with the best guys in the country. So, it was a lot of fun. There was a lot of preparation going into it though, too.
Absolutely. This is kind of a double question, but for your career and coaching career, I guess what's your proudest moment or something you achieved in each that's I guess means the most to you is like whether national title, world team, or kind of stuff like
Yeah.
that.
I mean, it's always going to be my first All-American, Troy Heilman. That to me, it's easy to achieve your own dreams and goals. And when those happen, yeah, they're cool, but you control that and your effort, your amount of work you put in. It's when you can get a guy who has these dreams and goals and tells you he wants to do X, Y, and Z, and you actually help him get there and you actually get him to believe and buy into the process. Now that's a whole nother ball game. And Troy was a guy who, when I stepped in here his junior year, he was maybe like 13 and 11 going into the national tournament. He'd lost, I want to say, his first 10 or 11 matches in the season, was
Wow. Yeah.
struggling. And we got to a point where I was like, man, this guy's either going to quit or we're right there. We're like this close to
Right at the
breaking
cusp.
out.
Yeah.
He's starting to pick things up. It just hasn't worked for him yet because, he hadn't done it for a long time. And then boom, it clicked. And he started rattling off wins. He got to the ACCs, makes the finals, automatically qualifies, makes it to day two of the national tournament. I think he went 2-2, and in the match he got bounced out. We were right there winning that one too. And I think if he did, I think he could have placed as a junior. So I was really confident going into his senior season that he was going to do something special, and he did. He went out, he took fourth place, which was huge for him. I remember his quarterfinals match against Keyshawn Hayes. The excitement and the
Oh yeah.
joy on his face when he won, and it really showed me a lot of not only like, hey, this was the goals he set out, but the philosophies we talked about, the way he bounced back after he lost in the semis,
Absolutely.
because he could have, hey, I'm an All-American, I'm going to cash it in
Just get
and
six. Yeah.
just take six. And no, he came back and I'm getting that next best thing. He wanted to be a national champ that year, and he went to, he tried to go and take third. He ended up fourth in a really close match with Kolodzik, but I was really proud of his growth mentally, physically, developmentally, like everything that went into that.
So for high school athletes transition to the college level, I guess what advice would you give them? And I guess with your transition, kind of what was that like, and what do you think was the biggest difference from the transition?
I would say, it's changed a little bit now with NIL and all the other things. Like
Right.
we're getting really professionalized. You got to be an adult as soon as you get here. And it's hard to say that because we understand they're young kids and they're going to make mistakes, but the way the landscape of college is changing and the money and the roster spots and all the different things, like there's not a lot of room for error in using the excuse of, oh, I'm just a kid. You need to really grow up fast. You can make mistakes, but if you don't learn from them and grow and develop, you're going to struggle. The other big one is on in the wrestling side. Don't forget what made you great. I feel like a lot of kids, when they go to college, they go to a place where everyone's a national champ or a state champ or, has done really good things and they're not having the success they want. So they feel like they need to reinvent their whole wrestling style and everything they do. And
Absolutely.
that's going to set you back. Like you didn't get here because you reinvented your whole wrestling style. You got here
Right.
from what you were really good at. Let's get tougher. Let's get better. Let's get stronger. Let's develop, where we're at and keep getting better.
Yeah. Speaking into kind of the new era of Carolina wrestling, what's it been like? It's been a couple years now, but new coach Rob Koll. You were at
Yep.
Carolina previously, but working with him, what's that just kind of been like?
He's freaking awesome. Different philosophy, just different things from one coach to another, what's important to them or what might have been important to your old head coach. And the big things for Rob is, we're going to spend time and effort on things that are going to make us win and make us better. And if they don't, we're not spending time or effort on them. And that comes to like the facilities. We want to win, we want to be better. All right, we need more mat space. How do we create more mat space? Well, we're gonna shift some things around. How do we get the recruits excited and really loving the facility and everything about Carolina wrestling? We're getting new lockers, we're upgrading spaces, we're We're going to rebrand. We're going to show. That's one thing that I felt was kind of missing a little bit when I got here is just with the branding. Like we're going to show the history of Carolina wrestling.
Absolutely.
You walk in the facility, yeah, you see the All-Americans and the national champs, but what about the team titles or the four-time ACC champs and the world team members and the Olympians? And we're going to create that story. So when you get here and you walk through the facilities, you know what Carolina wrestling is, you know the expectations, and you want to be in those positions. So, those are some of the big things that he's been pushing. Have been awesome. He brought back a lot of the alumni, a lot of the donors. So it's been fun kind of meeting everyone.
How would you describe your personal coaching philosophy or your coaching style?
Um, so I always joke about it a little bit, and I say it's very similar to Bobby Knight, minus throwing the chairs and all the other crazy
Yeah,
things that
yeah, oh yeah,
happen.
oh yeah,
But it's funny because when you talk about Bobby Knight, like, he's one of the best coaches out there. But you always hear
absolutely.
about, well, he was crazy. I don't think he was crazy. I think he was really dedicated and really focused and really driven and had a high standard. And yeah, maybe he showed his emotions the wrong way,
Right.
but when you go and look at the philosophies and the expectations, him, Wooden, some of those other guys were masters at it. And I would say I'm very, focused, driven, high expectations with, lifestyle, academics, competition, training. And, we're going to keep you on that straight and path and we're going to do it the right way. So it's, for me, those are kind of my values and philosophies, community, relationships, those are all big.
Kind of getting into like the developmental state, whether it's transfers coming in or just guys out of high school. What do you think the biggest thing you found is works the best with development? Just because it's a whole different atmosphere. Like
Yep.
what do you think are the key things starting out?
I think one of the big ones, and it's so weird because we talk about it on a daily basis with, and you've touched on it, transfers, NIL, all the different things, and you got to try and make these kids feel part of something. And
Right.
back in the day, we talk about like feeling part of a family or, like this is their home. Yes, we want to do that, but it's a lot harder to have those family conversations when, you're having transfers and all these different things coming in and out and kids bouncing after your year. So you got to make them feel like they're part of something special. And whether it's a family atmosphere, whether it's a championship program atmosphere mindset, you have to, when they get here, they got to feel like they really care about this place. They feel part of this place, that they play a big role in what you guys are trying to achieve. And that makes them work harder for you. That makes them want to be here every day and come to practice. And when they might start feeling homesick a little bit, they can come back to you like, hey, this is where I need to be. So
Right.
just making these kids and these athletes, some of them are young men now. Um,
Yeah.
we've
Yeah.
had some guys that got married. It's crazy how with COVID, how old some of the kids, are, and it's starting
Oh
to phase
yeah.
out. But making them feel like this is special and this is a special place for them.
For you as a coach, how do you approach helping, guys bounce back? 'Cause, I mean, it's easy to be there, with the win, but how do you kind of approach, getting a guy back on track where they got a match, the next day or in 30 minutes? How do you kind of
Yeah.
work through that?
Yeah, it's tough. You got to know each kid. Everyone's a little bit different. You got to figure out how to talk to them and understand what they're about, what makes them tick, what motivates them, what's going to get them back on track. Because, some things might work for other and might set the other kid off if you try doing it the same way. But I think the biggest thing is just kind of, letting them understand that, hey, we can't just rest on the laurels of the loss or whatever had just happened. Even if you won, you can't just rest and relax on that. We got to get ready for what's next. This is part of the process. This is getting us ready for the national tournament. This is part of the qualifying procedures. However you want to pitch it or look at it to make sure they understand, like, hey, yes, this might have been awesome or this might have sucked and my heart's ripped out, but we got something else bigger coming up that we got to get ready
Right.
for, and we got to refocus and we got to reevaluate. Maybe, when we get back to Chapel Hill, whether it's, I got to get better in this position, or maybe it could be something as simple as like you need more rest. You're beating your body up too much. You need a little bit more rest. We need to take some time off. We need to fix up an injury. It's just, it really depends on the situation and the kid.
When you're recruiting guys, bringing in guys on visits, kind of what's your vision that you're presenting to them for the program?
The big one here is we want you to come to a place where you're going to be able to win championships. You're going to be, successful in the classroom. And then when you get out of here, you're going to have tons of opportunities to go be successful in, you know, your job or in your career, whatever you want it to be. And Rob does a really good job of creating opportunities, whether it's through internships, through networking, through, job placement programs to make sure that our guys are not only being successful in the classroom and on the mat, but they're starting to set themselves up for life. And he always talks about the story of when he graduated, he had to go up to the career service fair or center and create his resume, and he had nothing but wrestling camps put on it.
Right,
And he
right.
goes, "Who's going to hire me?"
Yeah,
Unless I want to
absolutely.
be a wrestling coach. So he wants to make sure when our guys leave here and they create their resumes and it's not just all the wrestling accolades or awards that they've won, but they have real life experience to be able to go and get a great job and support a family and, be able to come back and get back to this program too.
Looking back at your career, what's one thing you wish you knew, like looking back when you were competing?
Oh man, that's a tough one. I wish I knew a little bit more of the opportunities that are kind of around you, just not only in wrestling, but also outside of wrestling. And like I said, Rob does a really good job of networking the guys. We got some guys that, UNC offers great study abroad programs where it might be a 4-week program. So you could do it in the summer during your off time, and make sure you got your training and everything set up to be able to go out there and do those types of things. So I feel like our guys get great experience, not only in the wrestling room, but in real life situations too. And for me, I just maybe explored some different avenues. As I was in college, I was very wrestling focused, driven. I knew I wanted to coach, but what if I did do a 1 month or 2 month internship in Iowa City at a marketing,
Right,
company or graphic design or something like that that really interests me now and where that could have took you. And so just little things like that. I don't know if I changed much wrestling wise, but there's a lot more out there also than just wrestling.
absolutely. Yeah, my middle school coach, his son actually used to work for y'all. Recently passed, Nick.
Yeah.
You have any cool stories you can kind of share, just like a memory you'd like to share on here?
Nick was heck, Nick got here 2017. So maybe it was either the year right after I got here or the year I got here. And we kind of started together and we worked hand in hand every single day, whether it was creating a year-long plan of this is what our phases are for each section of the season. And then when it came time to switch phases, like what are we focusing on? Strength, conditioning, speed, agility. Are we ramping up our workload? Are we ramping down? So we worked really close. And Nick was a guy who always was willing to go the extra mile to help anyone. Not just myself, not just guys on the team, but really anyone that was willing to work with him. Um, so when he left us here originally to go to Fort Bragg, when he took the new job, like that was a big hit because like, man, we had something special. You don't know, you just never, there's a lot of unknowns when someone leaves and a new
Absolutely,
person comes in. And the new guy, Simon, was great. He took over, he helped out, but man, losing Nick just as a person and as a friend it was tough.
yeah,
Because he still came back. He still was checking in how the guy's doing. We saw him at a baseball game, a couple days before the accident happened. And
right,
he didn't work here anymore, but he was always around. And when he never
absolutely,
left, and he was just a guy who was a really great person, great family man. He loved his daughter, loved his wife, and always, was always ready to tell stories about Emmy and how she was doing and how she was growing up. So, it's one of those you feel terrible for the family and everyone involved,
absolutely,
and we gotta, we're making sure we honor them in the right way in everything we do going forward.
absolutely. Yeah, just a couple more questions as we wrap up. What's been the
Yeah.
biggest focus for you guys as a program this offseason?
Yeah, so we've been really in the RTCs, just kind of focusing on developing our offense. And I tell the guys I hate saying you need to shoot more. We need to develop our offense. Like that's the number one thing someone will tell you. How do I get better? Well, I need to score more. Well, how? Tell me how you're going to do that. So
Right.
I know I hate when I tell people the same thing, but it's really we've been driving in and focusing and dialing in on whether it's finishing shots, setting our shots up better, creating more angles, more opportunities, and finding ways to score so they're more confident to actually take the risk. Because if you want to win, you gotta get to your legs, you gotta score, you gotta take more attacks, and we need to start picking up our attack rate.
Wrapping up here, you got anything you want to promote for the program, for the fan base, or anything like that?
The biggest thing for us is just making sure we keep filling Carmichael. We did a better job this year. We went up 20 spots, I think, in the attendance rankings, and when we had the NC State duel, I think we were around 3,500. But the goal is, we want to eventually sell that place out. We want people coming in here rowdy and excited and, ready to cheer on Carolina wrestling and make it a really fun environment. We should have season tickets coming out here pretty soon. Exciting dual schedule coming up. Obviously, we're always Virginia Tech, NC State, all those teams are always, on the schedule. And we're excited to release what's going to be out here next year.
Yeah, absolutely, Coach. Good luck to you guys with your upcoming season, and thanks for coming on.
No problem. Thank you.